Dreyer, Babich, Buccola Wood, founded over 28 years ago, has established itself as Sacramento's most successful law firm for ordinary people. People like Maria Lopez and Shannon Raymond. They've represented thousands of clients, from the very poor to the owner of the Oakland Raiders, Al Davis. Roger Dreyer has won more than $100 million for his clients, including 24 cases with at least $1 million in collections. A lot of lawyers profess success, but only Dreyer, Babich, Buccola Wood have established a distinguished and consistent track record of successful injury victim representation spanning over 20 years. One of the reasons for their success is persuading the jury to see the real truth in every case. And persuading the jury shows that our trial system isn't broken, it really works. And it's worked in all kinds of cases, like personal injury and wrongful death cases, vehicle accidents, dangerous products, job-related injuries, construction accidents, dangerous roadways, and trucking accidents. As advocates for the people, it's important to fight for a cause. They must fight for the rights of victims and champion the underdog against corporate power and greed. Dreyer, Babich, Buccola Wood has built an international reputation by securing more record-breaking verdicts and settlements than any firm in the country. Today, the Insider Exclusive takes an inside look at one of Sacramento's and California's most successful law firms, Dreyer, Babich, Buccola Wood, and their outstanding record for seeking justice for their clients, as we examine some of their multi-million-dollar record verdicts and settlements. Dreyer, Babich, Buccola Wood is proud of their legacy of excellence, representing ordinary people who may have limited or no financial means to devote to the cost of litigation. They fight for the underdog, they fight for you. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Sacramento, California, at the law firm of Dreyer, Babich, Buccola Wood. Today we're going to be discussing two significant cases at this firm, the Shannon Raymond case as well as the Maria Lopez case. First, we have Joe Babich, who represented Shannon Raymond. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about, before we get into the case, why you like this kind of work as a trial lawyer.
Yeah, well, I started out as a deputy district attorney a couple of years there. In fact, Roger Dreyer, my partner, was at the DA's office with us, and it was fun. We had the trial work, we got the experience, but although we represented the people of the state of California, we didn't have a client that we could really associate with.
Yes.
And it was nice to make the transition into the civil world and have a real live body, a client who we could make a difference for.
You're still prosecuting somebody, correct?
Correct.
But you're helping your client a lot more than, let's say, the state of California does.
Yeah, and it was easy for us because we got to go first still as prosecutors, and we got to sit on the same side of the counsel table, so it was an easy transition for us.
Now, you had a client come to you, her name was Shannon Raymond.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about what happened with it. Why did she come here in the first place?
Well, Shannon is a very interesting person. She was very active in her social life, her family life, had a very fun life going on. But she happened to come upon the Walnut Grove Bridge here in Sacramento County, and the bridge tender made some mistakes, and the counterweight came down on her car.
It's a bridge that is a drawbridge, correct?
Correct. And you know, I grew up in this area, and I've been over that bridge a number of times, and I never really paid much attention to it. And when we got the case, we saw the pictures, the counterweight on top of the car, and it was a tragedy because it really disrupted her life.
Yeah. Now, tell us some of the issues that were relevant to this case when you first saw it. Obviously, the other side saying it's her fault.
Yeah, and there's signages, there's warnings, there's lights, there's bells, there's whistles going on whenever the drawbridge is about to be opened. So that was a very big concern of mine because I questioned why did she get to that point that she got to. She did get to that point. Ultimately, the jury did find that she was at some degree at fault.
Yeah.
But the sad part of the case is she got to this point of danger and she asked the bridge tender for some help. She said, "What do I do? What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Stay right there."
Right.
and he went in and opened the bridge.
So when they broke down the negligence, they found that the bridge tender, the operator,
Yes.
Was, I think, 10% responsible, correct?
Yes.
And she was somewhat responsible.
Yes.
And the city, the county of Sacramento?
The county was also responsible. And it was interesting because the county was going to be responsible for 100% of the bridge tender's negligence. It's called vicarious liability.
Right.
But we found something very interesting in the jury questionnaires. The jury was focusing on the county in some of their responses. And that caused me to try the case a little differently.
And what do you mean by that?
Well, I thought that the jury was going to feel for this bridge tender. I thought that they were going to find him not as much of fault as I thought he should be, and they were going to probably suggest that he wasn't properly trained. And I got that from the jury questionnaires, not necessarily intentionally, but I got that from the jury questionnaires. So I tried the case, and we went a little more aggressively after the county for not training this guy, because he came in and said, I didn't know that was the zone of danger, believe it or not.
And how long had he been working on the job?
About 5 years.
5 years. And he didn't know where the zones of danger were?
Not at all. So
it's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Absolutely amazing, but the jury ultimately took that lead and they found the county 40% at fault.
Now, one of the problems you had, one big problem you have with this case is, even though you found the county at fault and they would be responsible, there were some damages that happened to Shannon, medical damages. And normally, if you had never been in an accident or had back problems before, and that was her problem, a back problem, correct? It'd be pretty easy to determine what the damage was. But she had prior back injuries, didn't she?
She had a significant history of prior back and leg symptoms. The leg symptoms suggest there might have been a disc injured before the accident. But we really did our homework on that issue. There was interestingly enough, there was a medical record that no one could really read. The defense doctor read it to his benefit.
Right.
Well, we took it a step further, and we actually interviewed the physician that wrote the record, and it turned out to say something different from what the defense thought it was.
Well, how could something mean or say something different when people are reading English?
Well, the medical record was handwritten. It was illegible. And the defense felt that it attributed a back injury to something that happened before our accident. In fact, it didn't. And we were able to clarify that at trial, and the jury, once they found all of that, they were able to sort out her prior history. They acknowledged she had a prior injury. But the key, too, was sorting out and clarifying that medical entry, as well as bringing in a number of independent witnesses who knew Shannon Raymond and who were able to testify about her activities before the accident. And that really helped us beat that issue.
As a result of this verdict, and it was a settlement and a verdict?
No, it was an actual verdict, went to jury trial.
As a result of it, what changed in the county of Sacramento?
Well, the good news is a couple of things. That message that the jury sent out saying, hey, Sacramento County, you didn't train your employee here properly. I'm convinced that's going to cause them to really have more safety meetings with those bridge tenders. We have a number of those similar type bridges over the Sacramento River. It's not the only one. A lot of people travel over those bridges. So I think, number one, we're going to get better training on the part of the county in training their employees, bridge tenders. And number two, they've actually redesigned the configuration of the intersection, and they now have a warning sign in the zone of danger. They say, keep clear. That wasn't present when we started this lawsuit. It's there now, and I'm sure it's because of this lawsuit.
Well, I want to thank you very much for spending time with us today about this case. I'm glad you won it, and I'm sure others who have similar difficulties will contact you. Thank you.
Oh, very welcome. Thank you.
We're now going to discuss a very significant case of the firm, Maria Lopez's case, and I have with me Naomi Esparza. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Roger Dreyer, of course. Tell us a little bit about why you like being a lawyer, especially for folks like Maria Lopez.
Well, you know, I've always wanted to become an attorney to represent people that can't stand up for themselves. And I think in this case, it's especially important because I was working with a family, our firm represented a family who was from my same cultural background. And so it was important for me that we were able to represent our clients in the best way that we could.
Right. Tell us what happened. I think it was in June of 3 years ago, right? 2007?
Correct.
What happened to Maria Lopez?
Well, as she was driving in Fresno, she was driving on a street that didn't have any stop signs. So as she was going through, another vehicle driven by Mr. Ramirez, who's driving under the scope and course of his employment with the Disabled American Veteran
Meaning
Charities.
he was on the job.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it was a company similar to Salvation Army, where he was doing a dump run for the company. And on the street that he was on, it was perpendicular to the street that Maria was on. And he did have a stop sign. However, he ran the stop sign and broadsided our client. And it was discovered right after the incident occurred that he was, in fact, intoxicated.
Right. Now, tell us about Maria Lopez. What type of person is she? You get to know her quite well.
Sure. Maria was a very energetic and vibrant person, and I really got to know her through her family. Mm-hmm. And we had a close contact with the daughter, who was our primary point of contact when we first started the case. And I also interviewed co-workers and her grandchildren, and everybody had the same thing to say about her. She was very energetic. She was the life of the party. She was always doing something. She was a very hard worker, always working. This was just a very lively person.
As a result of the accident, she suffered some severe brain damage, didn't she?
Correct.
So what is her condition today?
Well, unfortunately, Maria's deceased now.
Okay.
Her injuries were very debilitating because she suffered that severe brain injury and fractures to her hip and her ribs, and her spleen was taken out, pelvic fractures. She was unable to move, and when they tried to do physical therapy, it was just too painful. Right. So she ended up developing contractures of her hands and her feet, and that just got worse because she wasn't getting adequate care. And of course, she could never return back to the life that she had while we were trying this case. And from this case, however, we were trying to get her the compensation she needed to get the surgeries she needed so that she could try to at least get some of that life back.
Mm-hmm. Now, Jesus Chavez, he was a driver, is that correct?
Correct.
He worked for the Disabled American Veterans Charities, correct? And it was shown, you discovered that he had been drinking prior to coming to work, right?
Right.
His supervisor actually allowed him to go to work, right?
Correct.
That's how they became involved with the negligence issue here, right?
Exactly.
What were some of the big challenges you had in proving this case so that you got the best result for Maria?
Sure. One of the things that was very challenging was the fact that we were dealing with a company whose name was the Disabled American Veterans Charities.
Right.
Because obviously that's a name that would probably have, it wouldn't allow people to be angry at what they had done. Mm-hmm. In essence, let the driver take the keys to the vehicle. We didn't want the focus to be that this is a charity company and therefore people should feel sympathy.
Right.
And so we wanted to make sure that the jurors did not take that into consideration and actually just looked at the facts. The fact that Mr. Ramirez came to work heavily intoxicated. We tracked back the alcohol level that he was tested at the time after the incident and tracked it back to what he had that morning when he went to work, and it was much higher than a .08. And they didn't adequately supervise them. They just told him to take the keys. And we wanted to show that they have to have some type of system in place so that people just don't come in and take any keys, and there's no supervision as to how they might come to work intoxicated, drugged, or in some form unfit to take the vehicle of the company.
Right. And we one of the key things that we developed in terms of a strategy here was that defendant as an employer, whether it's a Disabled American Veterans or Corporate X, they would have clearly admitted liability because they knew that this guy was intoxicated. They knew that he'd caused the incident.
Yeah.
And we wanted to keep them in because we wanted, from a strategic standpoint, we wanted to send a message to employers in the community that they have to monitor their employees. They can't just say, hey, this guy came to work drunk and it's not our fault.
Right.
That they have a responsibility, because drunk drivers, I mean, it's an epidemic out on the road. And drunk drivers are not in a real good position to assess whether they should or they shouldn't be driving. And when an employer has employees there, they need to be responsible and exercise their judgment to make certain these people are capable of driving, because they have a duty of care. And that's why we kept them in. And even though, as Nomi indicates, it was a real challenge to us with the jury, because we were concerned. I mean, it's the American flag and it's a charity and everything that went with it. But this jury really got past that and recognized that the person that was important was Maria, not the charity, but Maria.
How do you deal with what do you say to the jury so they can get past that fact that you're suing a charity that normally does a lot of good, right? And if you take money from them, they can't fulfill their mission. What do you say to them?
Well, that's always an issue, and even in a corporate defendant, and it's certainly an issue when you have an individual defendant, because the juries don't find out that there's insurance involved or how much insurance. And in this case, what Nomi and I did was develop who Maria Lopez was, through her family, through her coworkers, and through even her physicians, just her battle and how hard she worked to get better. We also had her come testify. She had a very strong injury, and one of the great things that Nomi won't talk about that she provides is she has an immediate cultural connection with people. I love what I do, and I've represented many Spanish speakers through the years, but there's been a big difference when Nomi can communicate in a way in which they get a full vocabulary and a full understanding. We sometimes don't think people get stuff. They get it, but they need to understand it and have it explained to them. And there's no question that one of the reasons that we were able to have Maria get on the stand is that she trusted Nomi, she trusted me, but there was a connection. And we needed to have the jury, to get past this bias that you're talking about, we had to get the jury connected to our client. They had to understand that she was a real human being. This was a minimum wage earner, Hispanic woman who spoke Spanish. And we were trying this case in front of 12 Caucasian jurors in Fresno, which is a conservative community.
Right.
There's some big challenges there. And the key in any case, but particularly in Maria's case, was to make sure that they understood, first of all, she was a human being.
Yeah.
And second of all, she had suffered a catastrophic loss that had impacted not only her but her family. Money wasn't going to make it all any better for her, but it was going to give her some quality of life and opportunity for medical care that otherwise she wouldn't be able to have.
How did it make you feel when the jury came back with the verdict?
I felt, you know, it's hard to say before how you're going to feel, but at that moment I just felt relieved that Maria was going to be able to get the surgery she needed, because it was devastating that she no longer was the way that she was, and it was really important that we would try to get her back to some type of life that she had before.
So while this trial is ongoing, there's no surgery happening that she needs?
Well, she's living in a convalescent facility. She's sharing a room with 2 other patients who have serious disabilities.
Yeah.
Her daughter, who is a phenomenal person, would go visit her every day and travel to see her and bring her kids to see her to give her some semblance of life and connection.
Yeah.
And this result that this jury compensated Maria allowed her to purchase a home, have her family live with her, give her attendant care, get her out of that facility.
Right.
And while, unfortunately, you know, she has ultimately succumbed to her injuries and the consequences, she, at least over the last couple of years, has had a quality of life with her family, improved her family's quality of life, and that's really, while we're all on the planet, is to help people that we care about and love.
Yeah.
And she's left a tremendous legacy to her family that their best legacy would have been to be herself.
I understand it was the largest jury award in Fresno County, wasn't it? How big award was it?
It was a 10.5.
Wow. That must have been one of your first cases, was it?
It was, and it was tremendous.
That's a way to start your career.
It was tremendous to have a great result for our client.
Yeah. You know, in the few moments that we have left, how do you pick cases? I mean, I don't know how this case came to you, but It's so much time you have to devote to a case, and there's so many people in need out there. How do you select the case that you ultimately focus on?
Well, this case came to us from another lawyer, a sole practitioner who the insurance carrier for DAV was basically bullying and treating very poorly. And because he's a sole practitioner, he didn't really have the resources and ability to provide her the kind of representation they wanted. So what we basically did is we allowed the insurance company an opportunity to do the right thing with this sole practitioner. We made a demand through him for the policy limits of $3 million. And then once they didn't pay it, and I realized that they weren't going to pay it, I agreed to take the case, and Noemi and I then worked it up for trial. They then wanted to settle the case for the limits. Then they offered it as soon as they had someone handling it that they knew they had a problem with. And they eventually offered more than the policy, and the insurance carrier ultimately paid the judgment on this because the insurance company, by their conduct of not paying the policy limits when they could have, exposed DAV to an excess judgment, which it ended up getting hit with.
Well, thank God you were on the case, both of you. And we really appreciate you being with us today, because this sends a message out to everybody. There's lawyers like you guys that are willing and able to take cases on when the odds are so much against the poor person out there. Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.